All right, our last learning unit on hormonal regulation. Now, we could probably spend an entire course studying endocrinology, and this is going to be a thread that we will weave throughout the rest of our course well into Biochem 2, and we've already begun to study some aspects of it in our study of insulin and glucagon and so forth. So we're just going to take a couple of days here and really just sort of think about some of the highlights of the endocrine system, make sure we have some of the terminology down, because this is something that we will revisit as we move throughout the rest of the course. So again, we mainly used some external videos to kind of summarize some aspects here with the endocrine system. Keep in mind there's about 10 glands that are involved in the endocrine system, and so I would like you to sort of know where each are located and then sort of the highlights of what they're important for. Some of these we've delved a little bit deeper in. We've certainly spent a lot of time talking about the pancreas and insulin and glucagon and their kind of connection to diabetes and glucose kind of homeostasis. And the new one that we're going to spend a little bit of time here with that I'd like you to understand a little bit more about are the function of the adrenal glands and then of the thyroid. So even though we will talk about some other ones kind of very generally, those two are new ones that I do want you to understand a little bit more about. And to that end, to also understand their connection with the HPA axis and the HPT axis. So again, we'll talk about those in just a second here. But again, about 10 different organs that release hormones, and so big picture, when we think about what hormones are really messengers that are relaying information about what is perceived in our environment and trying to get certain tissues to respond accordingly. And so about 10 different organs or tissues, glands are involved in this process. And then there's well over 50 different hormones or messengers. We're only going to focus on a few of them. Again, we'll sprinkle them out throughout the rest of the course as they become more relevant. But good news is we've already studied some of them. So again, on our kind of lecture notes that we had, when we break this down and kind of try to understand how this works, I want you to understand that there are kind of some more amino acid derived hormones, and so those are the ones that are either peptides or proteins themselves, or they are messengers that are derived from amino acids. And so on your study guide you'll have some information about just the little bits of information that you'll need to know about those. And then there's many that are cholesterol derived, and again that's why we spent a lot of time understanding cholesterol metabolism, the impact of statin use on cholesterol biosynthesis, and how that can have negative kind of downstream effects in this regard. So again, I want you to understand the location and function of many of these different glands. So many of them are located kind of in your head and neck area, and then there's a few that are located sort of in your abdominal region. And then again, for hormones, I'd like you to know the class, whether they're protein-based or whether they're lipid cholesterol-based, and then very, very superficially what their function are. And we did spend a little bit of time talking about these two different axes. So again, the HPA axis and the HPT axis, remembering that H stands for the hypothalamus. So that is sort of like the CEO or the owner of your body. It's really constantly kind of gauging the environment, trying to figure out what's going on, what do we need to do. That gives a message to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland, again, that's the P in the HPA or the HPT. That pituitary gland we think of as the master gland. And so that really is going to be sending out signals to the rest of the body in terms of what it needs to be doing. And so the HPA axis sends information to the adrenal glands and is responsible sort of for our stress response. The HPT axis has the pituitary gland sending information to the thyroid. And again, the thyroid is one of these glands that's really sending out signals to maintain overall homeostasis in your body. And so we spent a little bit of time talking about kind of implications of both of those as they relate to cortisol and the stress response, and then the thyroid and kind of overall metabolism and homeostasis. So very, very superficial learning unit. We're not going to be able to delve too deeply into this. Look to your study guide for information that you'll need to know about those specific areas. Last learning.